$1.7 million of your money. That's what was paid out in the last days of Governor Martinez's administration.
Why? 6 state employees filed claims with New Mexico's Risk Management Office in late November last year, claiming harassment, hostile work environment, women being passed over for a promotion, unfair treatment, and retaliation by then State Police Chief Pete Caceres.
However, all of the claims were confidentially settled by year's end. A 3-month Larry Barker investigation finds that New Mexico's Risk Management Office paid public money to keep damaging allegations about the ex-governor from going public.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to many of those involved.
So what could be potentially happening here is people's silence is being bought with public money.
In your opinion, what are these cases about?
Governor Martinez, politics, greed.
We're talking about payouts of nearly $2 million. But don't bother looking for the evidence. It's hidden away. And the only clues are a handful of canceled checks. Ground zero for these confidential transactions? New Mexico's Risk Management Office.
Risk Management handles liability claims filed against a state. Anytime a public employee or agency is accused of wrongdoing for everything from civil rights to medical malpractice, the case is handled by Risk Management. Our investigation finds late last year, the Martinez administration negotiated a secret deal that cost taxpayers $1.7 million. Sources say the State Risk Management Office paid a group of disgruntled public employees huge sums of money in order to keep compromising information about then Governor Martinez under wraps.
Due to his involvement, former State Police Chief Pete Caceres has firsthand knowledge of the cases.
If the public was able to look at the facts of these cases, what do you think the public would believe?
I think the public would be outraged that these cases were settled without proper investigation.
When DPS Deputy Secretary Amy Orlando was transferred to another agency, she filed a claim against the state charging discrimination. After DPS Supervisor Terry Thornberry was reprimanded, she alleged discrimination. Thornberry claimed in part her work conditions caused her stress, and she no longer walks her dog. Even though an investigator found claims were not substantiated, Thornberry asked the state to pay her $2.5 million in damages. DPS employee Diana Desjarnette also claimed discrimination, and the stress caused her in part dizzy spells. She asked for $2.5 million to settle the case. Sergeant Monica Martinez-Jones alleged discrimination because she had been passed over for promotion. Even though a DPS investigator found that the allegations were not substantiated, Martinez-Jones sought a settlement anyway. Deputy State Police Chief Ryan Suggs alleged harassment, hostile work environment, and retaliation. After Sergeant Julia Armendariz was transferred out of the governor's security detail, she claimed discrimination. Among her accusations, Chief Caceres refused to allow her to buy her shotgun when she retired. Martinez-Jones, Suggs, and Armendariz demanded $4.2 million collectively to settle their cases. News 13 has learned Risk Management did not assign investigators before settling the cases in the last days of the Martinez administration.
I wrote 2 separate emails to Governor Martinez and her entire staff and the attorneys involved, pleading with them not to settle any of these cases, to fully investigate them. Nobody listened. They just did what they were going to do.
Newly named Cabinet Secretary Ken Ortiz oversees risk management. He says investigating claims made against the state is important.
Well, the first part is to assign an investigator to review the claim. They would make a determination if this is a credible claim. From that point, our attorneys then would do what's called a risk analysis. Should we litigate this because it's defendable and the claims are baseless? Or is this claim real, and it could potentially cost the state of New Mexico millions of dollars if we went to court on that.
That's the way it's supposed to work. However, sources say the $1.7 million settlements last year were rushed. Of course, individual cases may vary, but state officials say generally it takes 4 to 6 months to resolve a case.
These claims were settled in 30 days. The files were then sealed from public view.
The truth should come out eventually. The truth needs to come out. These settlements are cloaked in secrecy, and the public should be able to see them.
Why were the cases settled so quickly? Well, that's the $1.7 million question. Confidential sources involved with this case say the claims were resolved in the final days of the Martinez administration out of fear that personal information about the governor might be made public.
In a confidential settlement demand letter obtained by News 13, attorney Diane Garrity, who represented Monica Martinez Jones, wrote, quote, "This case will generate publicity. If DPS does not resolve this case before we file suit, it is likely that the reputations and careers of the defendants will be sullied to the point where they may not be able to obtain alternative employment at the conclusion of Governor Martinez's term." In a December 5th settlement demand, attorney Linda Hempel, who represented Martinez Jones, Armendariz, and Suggs, referenced, quote, "damaging information about the governor professionally and personally." In the same letter, Hempel writes, quote, "We have compelling and irrefutable evidence of the governor's significant personal issues and instances of inappropriate behavior." Hempel suggests release of this negative information could, quote, "destroy the governor's reputation." She demanded more than $4 million to settle the case. And what was this so-called compelling evidence in both cases? A secret tape recording of the governor's husband, Chuck Franco.
Sources say at the time New Mexico's first family was having marital problems. And they say the governor wanted information on her husband. State Police Sergeant Julia Armendariz admits through her attorney the governor directed her to record a phone conversation with First Gentleman Chuck Franco. Those sources say Franco made politically explosive comments about his wife. Our sources tell us that Armendariz kept the recording and used it as leverage to settle her risk management case.
Are you aware of that recording?
I'm aware that that recording exists.
When were you brought aware of this recording?
Right before the settlement mediation.
What is the nature of the recording?
I can't comment on it. I'm bound by confidentiality rules.
Do you believe that this recording is a factor in the settlement of these cases?
Yes.
This is public money.
State Senator Sandra Rue is an advocate for public accountability in state government.
This process where claims are filed against the state and there are settlements made, the whole process is cloaked in secrecy. And the way this thing is structured now, it leaves itself open to abuse by government officials who use this process essentially to pay off people.
Risk Management Director last year, Laura White Davis, was directly responsible for approving the settlements. She had no comment. Chuck Franco told us he was stunned to find his phone conversation was secretly recorded. Julia Armendariz is now retired. She refused further comment. Former Governor Martinez would not agree to an on-camera interview, but in a written statement she said, quote, "I did not encourage, influence, or become involved in any risk management settlements." She went on to write, quote, "It would be deeply disappointing if someone on the security detail chose to catalog personal information for their own benefit." Police Chief Pete Cassettis retired at the end of the Martinez administration.
Well, Larry, I agreed to sit down with you because what was done to me was wrong. And ultimately what was done to the taxpayers was wrong. Now, I can't openly talk about everything, but I can talk about myself and my conduct.
How have these accusations impacted you personally?
Terribly. Terribly. Some people say as the chief I sign up for this. Well, I didn't. On a personal level, it's been devastating.
Larry Barker, KRQE, News 13.
Want to see what the settlements are all about? Well, you'll have to wait a while. Lawyers involved in the cases agreed to keep details of the settlements confidential until June 2023.